Hello, everybody. How's that? Nice. Another good one for you today. We have a nice change of pace from the usual caribou or pine beetle talks, something aquatic, which is really nice. Today we have Christina Ciesielski. Did I get it? Excellent. Christina is the Fisheries Program Manager for Carrier-Scanney Tribal Council. She's going to be talking about some of their work with the Nechako Sturgeon Recovery Initiative. We have an endangered species just over here in the Nechako River. So there's quite a bit of work now in terms of developing a recovery plan for this species, identifying what's preventing their successful sort of recovery. Now, a little bit of background on Christina. She's been working in the natural resources sector for a while now. She started out with a diploma degree at BCIT in Fish, Wildlife, and Recreation. Did a bunch of work around the province, I guess, lots of consulting. Worked with marble murrelets in Desolation Sound. She's done some work with gypsy moth in the Lower Mainland, tracking and following those. Lots of fish work in Lillooet, Kitimat area, and on Haida Gwaii. Christina is actually an alumna of UNBC. Graduated in 2004 with her bachelor's in the Fish and Wildlife program, and I think she has a minor in First Nation studies as well. So welcome back. I think it is, yeah. We can hear you. Since that time, doing lots of stream survey work in silviculture in the north here. Most recently, she's been working, like I said, with Carrier-Scanney Tribal Council as a senior fish bio, and since 2009, I think, she's been the Fisheries Program Manager. Excellent. So she's going to be talking about their involvement with the Nechako White Sturgeon Recovery Initiative. I'll hand it over now. There you go.
Thank you. And then the possible causes for the recruitment failure. And then I'm going to talk about the projects that we've been working on and the restoration approaches that we've been taking and the projects that are coming up. So I don't know if this is all basic to you or not, but I'm just going to go over the white sturgeon. It's got a heteroceral tail like a shark. It's got 5 rows of scutes. Cartilage like a shark, and the mouth comes out like a vacuum to suck up food off the bottom. It's got barbels for finding clams and other food on the bottom. So some shots here from some of the work. So we have them in the stretcher. We've put in radio tags, pit tags. We'll take a scoot to mark which year that we did work on them. There's just pictures of the barbels from some juveniles. And the mouth, which I couldn't find a better picture of the mouth, but anyway. So they've been here for a long time. That's dinosaurs, 175 million years ago. They can grow up to 6 meters in length, 1,800 pounds. So the ones up here don't get as big as the ones in Lower Fraser. You probably see lots of those on the internet. They usually show them. The water is a bit warmer down there, so they don't get as big up here because of the cold. So they're periodic spawners. So once they reach maturity, the females reach maturity about 20, 30 years old, then they spawn every 5 years or so, and it seems that the males start spawning earlier. And they don't make a nest, not like salmon. There's no red, but they broadcast spawn over the substrate, and they're genetically distinct. So there's 4 other sturgeon populations along the Fraser. There's some debate as to whether the Upper Fraser, Nechako, and the Mid Fraser are part of the same population or not. So it depends on how you look at it genetically. So they're adapted to large, stable rivers. And so there's a picture of one of the displays we have of the different stages. So after spawning occurs, then the eggs take about, depends on the temperature, it's accumulated thermal units for the eggs to hatch, and then the larvae emerge about 13 to 26 days later, and then they go into hiding under gravel if it's available. That's one of the problems. And then they're into their feeding stage, and once they reach a meter, or when they're under a meter, then they're still considered a juvenile, and then over a meter, they're considered a subadult, adult. So here's, it shows some of the different populations. It's the Fraser River, and then the Upper Fraser, the Nechako, up in here. And so the early modeling showed that there was over 3,000 fish prior to the 1950s. And then the population assessments that were done in the 80s and 90s, they're estimated like about 300 individuals. There's new population modeling occurring. So here's a bit of a closer look of the watershed. So there's been work done, surveys done all the way up to Takla Lake, up in here, and down in Stewart Lake. And then there's also in Fraser Lake, and having a hard time looking at it that way. So there's sturgeon at Fraser Lake, and most of our work is concentrated around Vanderhoof. And there's a satellite picture of where most of the work is concentrated. So they go and they spend the winter in deep holes. We've got use cameras to look, and they like stack like logs in the deep holes over the winter. And then in the early spring, they start to migrate. So the recovery goal is a naturally self-sustaining population, and we're saying right now that that's about 1,000 individuals and of adults. So there's different things that we're looking at. A lot of the work that the Garry-Scan Tribal Council is involved with is during the spawning, the monitoring for eggs and larvae. We've helped a bit with some broodstock collection when there was a pilot hatchery. And then we also help with juvenile habitat monitoring, so looking for juveniles and seeing if they're recruiting at all. So one of the other stopgap measures that's happening is a conservation hatchery or recovery facility. So the recovery team was started in 1999. The sturgeon was listed as Kasiwak endangered, and then in 2006 it went under the Species at Risk Act. And then the recovery initiative broke off in a technical working group and a community working group, so that the technical working group looked at more of the research aspect, and the community working group could focus on the public outreach programs in schools, harm reduction work with First Nations fishers. And the CSTC has been a partner since about 2002. So with the hydrograph, the current spawning window is really shortened. There's the months. You can see that. So there used to be a larger spawning window, and since the construction of the dam, there was a large avulsion, and it moved down the river and made its way down towards Vanderhoof, so a bunch of silt and sand was deposited. And what the sturgeon like is more of a gravel, the larvae, so they can hide. And there's, in red is where the dam and the spillway, so it kind of highlights all of this that was created with the dam, was this large artificial lake. And then the avulsion went down to here and settled out in Vanderhoof. The recruitment failure is believed that because of that lack of proper substrate, that was there before, and with the flow now being completely altered, there isn't that kind of washing out of the substrate every year, like there otherwise naturally would be. So if the eggs don't have that, the gravel, then the larvae have a poor chance of survival. Let's see. Get to where I have some slides coming up, but one of the people that we're working with, Steve McAdam, did some research on the larvae and with different substrate types, and to see their survival rates and their growth rates, and it's quite a bit different when they do have that hiding ability. And so that shows what Vanderhoof looks like about now, or well, in '08. So the projects we've looked at are doing the radio telemetry that I mentioned, so that we could find out that they go up to the lakes in the wintertime. They actually travel quite a distance. They'll go from the Nechako into the Fraser River as well, all the way up to Tackle Lake. And then the only known spawning site that we've found is the one right by the Vanderhoof Bridge there, Burrard Bridge. So around late April or May, they start moving up towards the spawning site, and so we put down egg mats to try and catch the eggs, and then a couple of weeks after that, depending on what the temperature is, we put out the fyke nets. And then there's also work being done on the sediment and the turbidity. So so far, yeah, the only spawning population is at Vanderhoof, and yeah, so that's the place that we focused on with the restoration efforts with the habitat. So adult tagging, getting radio tags put in, so we're going to have to switch over to a new set of radio tags, because the other ones are going to expire soon. So in 2006, the pilot hatchery was started. So just an effort to see what it would be like if we could get a large number of juveniles into the river, if we could measure if that would help or not, if they were growing egg mats. Then acoustic monitoring was one of the newest things that we've been looking at. So we've got stationary receivers, boat-based telemetry, and then the egg mats. It's a coarse material. The eggs are really sticky when they spawn, so they grab on. We have different sizes of mats. We have up to 84 mats we put out. Some of the issues with them is that the different flow rates, so we've had to use some pretty heavy materials for them, and then having them move around. So it's quite a bit of work to get them in and out. So we first found eggs in 2010, and then in 2012 was the biggest year. Found 1,890 eggs, and in this past year we found 344 eggs, and we did find eggs down from the gravel pads that were established. So then there's the fyke nets. Larvae proved really hard to catch, and then so we managed to find some in 2011 and in the last couple of years. And it looked like that in 2007 there was a flood event, and there was a large recruitment from that, so it seemed like it mimicked earlier water flows and levels. There's a bit of a view of where the fyke nets are located. And there's some of the larvae. Those are a couple-day-old larvae. You can see the big yolk sac. And so these are some of the known spawning areas, and the ones that we focused on were the ones in red. So there's the one by the bridge here, and then this one, and those were the two that we decided to look at improving the habitat with gravel. So here's some of Steve's work where it's showing the hiding behavior and the less growth with the drifting if there isn't suitable substrate to hide in. And also here you can see the difference in 16-day-olds. So the habitat restoration, we put out what we call 2 pads with the right side of substrate, gravel, and then some other partners are monitoring the movement of that substrate. So here it is. It's quite the undertaking to get all this out there. So then that year we did have brood capture, and we had 300,000 eggs that were placed right over top of the gravel pads. And that year, unfortunately, we didn't catch any larvae that year, but we did in subsequent years. Some of those yolk sac larvae that I showed pictures of, those were caught in 2012 and 13, and 1 free-swimming larva in this past year. So one of these, a recent project is trying to pinpoint more accurately where spawning is occurring and site selection. And so that would be to set up this acoustic receiver array. And we've been working with some people from the Okanagan Nation Alliance that have been using this equipment. So if we can get it set up properly, then we'd be able to get a 3D picture of where they're spawning and when, and relate it to temperature and velocity. So this is just above the bridge, one of the sites there. There's one of the receivers. And ideally, we would get information like this. So we're still figuring out the right setup with the layout of the river. We ran 3 tests, like I said, and we haven't got the right setup yet, but we're going to work on it again this year, get out some more receivers. The river level went really low last year, so we couldn't do the last test because it was just too shallow, and these receivers are on these long rebar, and yeah, they'd be sticking out of the river and causes issues. So in this next year and next couple of years, like I said, we're going to refine this acoustic 3D array. We're going to be looking to put in new tags for radio telemetry. We're going to continue with the spawn monitoring with the egg mats and fyke nets. And then this year, there will be the opening of the recovery facility. So it's being built and it's nearing completion. That's Corey in the picture there. He's the new manager for the facility, and he's saying they should be going in and moving in March, and then in June they're to have a grand opening. And then there's also the continuing to look at the substrate and the movement with the pads and throughout the whole area. There's also a new project that Steve McAdam's looking at with a couple of other people, and that's using pheromones to see if they can direct the sturgeon to certain areas for spawning or direct them away from other areas. So he hasn't quite figured out what kind of size of trial he's going to set up this year, but that sounds really interesting. And another thing that we want to look at is the analysis of the juveniles that we do have samples from. So we take age samples. You take a little piece from the fin, and then you can read it like tree rings. You have a thin slice of it to read. And then we take a piece of the tip of the fin for the DNA. And there's just an aerial shot of where the facility is going in right there. So there's the bridge and the lower spawning gravel pad is here. And so most of the larvae that we caught were down here and a little bit further down there. And that's it, and I probably rushed my way through that, but if there's questions or comments.
Any questions for Christina?
Hello, and thank you. I was just wondering, when they try to flush out the river because of the dam, do they take into account when the sturgeon might be spawning, and how might that affect their spawning?
You mean the flows at Rio Tinto? Like, no, they've the agreement they made was for Chinook salmon, and it didn't include taking sturgeon into consideration. I'm not sure what's going to happen with the new recovery strategy. The federal government has finally put out the draft white sturgeon recovery strategy. There's 4 different populations, and Nechako being one of them. But there's been critical sites, habitat sites identified, like the ones in Vanderhoof. And so once the minister approves the plan, then there's going to be these orders put into effect that says you can't harm, alter the habitat. So we were asking someone from DFO yesterday how that's going to affect like the flows, and can we get the flows altered, so it would better suit the sturgeon. But she couldn't give us a clear answer on that, but I guess more will be revealed on that.
That's not really an option anymore, is it? Just to release a big flood of water to clean the gravels?
Well, I think it should be, but yeah, it's pretty hard to get them to open the tap.
I imagine there's a lot of stakeholders along the way that would be adverse to that kind of thing.
Yeah, and residents.
You mentioned the gravels that you're placing, the pads.
Mm-hmm.
How successful are those?
They seem to be pretty successful. Like we found larvae off the lower pad, so it seems to be an improvement. I mean, those were also the sites where the best suited sites. So as far as we can tell, it's been a help.
And are they fairly stable? Like, do the gravels actually remain, or will they move, migrate? Yeah,
no, they're definitely moving,
That's
what Zolt is looking at. It's the one, I think it's the lower pad by the bridge that's moving more, but it's also right by Murray Creek, where the outlet of Murray Creek is as well. So, yeah, you got to look at how much money do you want to spend putting gravel in.
Right, every couple of years
or
something. Yeah. Any other questions? Any questions online?
Thanks, Christina. Are there other locations in the Nechako where these fish could potentially spawn, but they don't appear to be?
Probably. We haven't identified any. Talking with some First Nations people, there might be some areas in Stewart Lake, but we haven't pinpointed anything.
Okay. Because it'd be nice if there was more than one spot.
Absolutely.
So we could spread things out.
Yeah, and it seems strange that there will only be one spot,
Mm-hmm.
and yet they have this huge area that they migrate between.
Yeah. Good.
So the one spot you mentioned there by the bridge, that's the only confirmed spawning location.
Right.
Now, you had a figure there where you had several, red and green and different colors. Are they expected locations? They look good?
Yeah.
So I guess your telemetry then is to sort of actually pin down some of these locations. Is that the idea?
It's more to figure out the timing of it for when they're moving up, so it helps us to pinpoint when we can put out the egg mats and expect to see them congregate.
I was late, so maybe I covered this, but do a question. Any evidence that the Nechako sturgeon might be spawning up in the Stewart River, because that's a far more stable system?
It's possible, but yeah, we don't have any evidence of that.
Because there's certainly sturgeon up in there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we've tracked them going up the Stewart into Stewart Lake and all the way up to Tackle Lake. Yeah.
So tell us about the hatchery. How's the hatchery coming along?
That's Corey's department.
Right.
It's coming along well.
They're doing something today, aren't they? Are they opening or commissioning the place today?
Could be. He said March that they were hoping to move in.
So this
Yeah.
is really just to, as a stopgap, as you mentioned, until they figure out the things about the spawning areas and then how best to manage the habitats.
Yeah, that's the idea. So to release, so when we had the pilot hatchery, we released juveniles that were about 4 months old. So they were like this big, I guess. So a bit of a better chance, but as we released them, we could see birds swooping down and picking them off. But I mean, we released thousands and thousands.
Birds.
I know, birds and other fish, you know.
How big? Oh, sorry, up in the back. Yes, sir.
Hi, Christina. Thank you for this presentation. I noticed with interest that you were talking about some, was it new 3D telemetry? And maybe you could tell us a bit more about that. I'd be curious to hear how maybe that, what kind of information you're collecting. Is it just regarding spawning or just general tracking?
So we're hoping that if we get set up right, then we can pinpoint like the location and the depth and put it together with the temperatures and the flows and just have a better idea of what they're selecting for, hopefully, so that we can maybe have a better look at other areas and know what to look for.
Yeah, my question was related to what you have investigated. You mentioned biological factors and physical factors, so sediment structure and so forth. Have you looked at any chemical parameters, maybe of the sediment or of the water, to characterize what's a beneficial spawning area for the fish and also maybe for the larval development? So more on the chemical side, or maybe if there are any areas that they would avoid.
Not that I know of. I don't think that's been done.
Thanks, Christina. Just a quick question about the habitat. Do you have any idea about what the carrying capacity is of the remaining Nechako there? Has anything been altered there in terms of, say, food availability and that kind of thing for sturgeon?
That has been brought up, and there's been concern that the sturgeon will eat all the salmon, and the salmon stocks are already not doing the best up in this area. So, no, I don't have a clear idea of what the carrying capacity is. I mean, they also feed on clams and other things.
So where did the goal of 1,000 adults come from? That's the target you're sort of working towards?
Yeah, I can't tell you specifically. It's not top secret. It was just, I'm not sure how they got to that number. Yeah.
So if part of your problem is having the silt and the clays settle down into that gravel and sort of drown you out, would it be possible to, at these areas you've highlighted, sort of accelerate the flow using a turbine or something to sort of keep that washed out? If you had faster moving water, it could keep the gravel going if you had some pipes and turbines. Have you experimented at all?
We haven't experimented with it. It's a consideration for sure what that would look like.
Yeah.
One last question? Well, we have two.
I'm not sure if this is another question for Corey or not, but you're talking about pheromone tracking, and I'm just curious if that's sort of like a future thing that's specific only to the hatchery fish that you're going to release, or whether you think you can sort of track them and guide them back to the spawning sites with the native populations as well.
Yeah, they're going to do the trials on the hatchery fish to begin with, but yeah, the idea is that we would be able to guide the wild fish into these preferred areas.
Okay, can we have a hand for Christina? Now, one announcement before you tear out of here. Next week, Graham Auld will be visiting from Carleton University, where he teaches on government and environmental policy. Next week, Graham's actually doing double duty. He's doing a talk for Global Fridays on the rise of certification as a form of sort of corporate governance. And he's going to give a talk in here in the Colloquium, working title, Climate Policy as a Super Wicked Problem. We've had a few of these in the wicked vein, so this is a super wicked problem. We'll see you next week.